Welcome to the Geek 101 podcast, episode 253, Escapist Fiction. Wherever I was happy, at peace. I knew that everyone I cared about was all right. I knew it. I'm Ariel Rada.
And I'm floating brain in a jar, Andy Bowman.
And we are going to talk about exactly what the title is, Escapist Fiction. There's not really much news, as I think, Andy, we've agreed not to really talk about delays because delays are going to happen.
Well, you know what's not going to get delayed, Ariel? Do you know what's not going to be delayed? Tenet, because Christopher Nolan is just not allowing it.
But let's talk about our topic today. This won't be a particularly long episode, as the absence of news and the crushing weight of anxiety that is the current circumstances led it so that we have shorter episodes. But let's talk about escapist fiction, and I think this is a very pertinent topic that, Andy, you have chosen and taken the reins in for this week's episode because everyone might feel the need to escape the circumstances we're in. Can you tell me really quick what is escapist fiction?
Well, I think escapist fiction, it really is based more on this reoccurring trope, and this is what I mean when I talk about this reoccurring trope of where a character actually escapes from reality that they've been given to, that they have this, an opportunity to live in a different reality altogether, either one made by external forces or one made of their own mind because the character has finally cracked. And this is just the kind of trope that I kind of want to talk about, where everyone is just so stressed and so the world just seems so bleak that discussing moments in fiction where characters are kind of given this choice between escaping all their responsibilities and living in a bit of a self-made paradise. I think the Cave of the Lotus Eaters is the original trope from Homer's The Odyssey. That people can actually escape into another reality where they are essentially just a brain floating in a jar, and anything about reality is just whatever they make it.
Yeah, this is like you said, it's a very, very common trope. You see it in tons of different, not so much movies, although it does exist in movies, Andy. I think what you are implying and what I'm maybe specifying in this particular moment is that you see so much of it in long TV shows. Much like every medical show needs a pandemic episode, every cop show needs an internal affairs episode. Much like every sitcom needs a major breakup, every long-running fantasy/sci-fi TV show will probably employ an episode where the hero can shed his hero's burden and live a life that he thinks he or she was meant to live, or one without the burden of the weight, in terms, in Buffy's case, right? A life where I'm assuming she is not, in fact, responsible for slaying the vampires. We have a ton of other examples we'll get into a little bit. What else can we expand upon in regards to escapist fiction? Why is it maybe even worth talking about?
Well, in one thing, it is it's kind of a central tenet to our longer running fantasy sci-fi shows, right? For the first part, it's got to be fun for the creative team because they get to basically hit the reset button for one episode, maybe bring up some old characters. There's, at least 2 episodes of Supernatural that I can think of off the top of my head that take place in the first five seasons.
We have the Djinn and the Trickster.
I was thinking of the Djinn and then the episode where they're in heaven.
Oh, heaven, yes, that's right, yeah.
Yeah. But yeah. I'm sorry, Ariel, what was the question?
No, is there anything else that we can expand upon with
Oh.
this
I
topic.
mean, there's like a lot that we can expand upon. Where in movies you have the Matrix, right? That's the core example of the red pill blue pill choice. Unfortunately, nowadays we can't really say red pill without bringing up an entire section of the internet I'd rather not believe exists. But it's just this idea that there is something more to life than innate pleasure.
Mm-hmm.
That's one of the like big philosophical things, right? The Platonic cave. The idea here is that, well, if you could live in a box and just experience only pleasure, would you do it? And most people will say no, because there's something different. There's something inherent about knowing the truth of your reality and a few other things that make life worth living, and not just the positive experiences.
Yeah, and it's really something when you think of actual real life, right? Where someone like you and I are able to recognize let's just say the horrors and the problems with today's reality and with real life, right? How people are, how things are, what the situation is, the systems we are put into that we cannot escape. And it's just kind of funny that you and I, we send videos and pictures and tweets and memes of people who are in real life in their own in their own false reality, unable to remove themselves from what they think the world is instead of what the world actually is.
That's right, and that's why I choose not to wear a mask wherever I go, Ariel.
That's
because
why you're
I've
one of those
decided-
people. You need a haircut.
Yes, I need a haircut, and I could do it myself, but instead, God, yeah,
Yeah,
There-
it reminds me a lot of this, some of the students that I've come across throughout the years. Even when I was working at a camp, right? There's this team of campers, basketball players, football players, right? Who are like, yeah, let's play tackle football with the camp counselors, and we're all college age students. And
God.
and it's just like, he's like, we can't, because we'll crush you. And they just like, you don't understand. They're in this false reality, but that's neither here nor there.
Right. I mean, whenever you get into any kind of bubble, like your version of reality ultimately warps. God, man, I'm just thinking like all the weird things the Supernatural did to bring actors who were dead or whose characters were dead back for like one episode, including Ruby.
Mm-hmm.
We'll do a Supernatural episode soon, right, Ariel?
Yeah. At least like almost a should you watch / celebration of it. But yeah, we'll get to Supernatural, but you're right, that's one of the ones. The setting of Supernatural really lends itself to be able to put our heroes in that predicament.
Yeah. So let's just kind of dive into this, right? We've identified the trope. We have an idea of what we're talking about. This is when a character experiences a world that is, this is often also a kind of final temptation or a temptation for the character. You've got your heroic journey, and all of a sudden, like, hey, you can drop it all. Like, are you really for the cause of this thing or the sacrifice, Aang? Or would you rather live in a world where all your monk buddies are still alive? But let's just talk about a few examples of this trope, or a few of our favorite uses of this trope.
Yeah. So I think for me, when considering this trope, whenever I come across it, it works better the greater the burden on the hero. We talk about Supernatural, and we talk about Dean Winchester specifically, And if you watch Supernatural, you know that Dean Winchester, his character archetype, is the dutiful son. At least for the first 5 seasons, right?
Right. He's
And
also the better actor.
Oh, it's not even close. When you if you're really paying attention between him and Jared, it's not close. He suffers so much, and the burden is put on his shoulders. First by his dad, then by the misdeeds of his brother. And you can't really say that about Sam, right? Sam has suffered, but Dean is the one with the responsibility. You know, whether it be from his dad or the man upstairs, so to speak. And so for me, that hits harder when he has to break that escape than another version of this where it's Superman who is in the escapist fiction in his own story. I'm referring to the episode of the Justice League called For the Man Who Has Everything, which is based off a comic book arc.
Yeah, that's one of the ones I think of all the time too.
Right. It's very good. It's so everybody knows Superman's origin, blah blah blah. Krypton, whatever. In this story, Krypton never explodes. And he is home with his birth father, birth mother, and is raised as a stalwart young man on the planet Krypton. Clark Kent does have a burden, but he's also Superman. And so when it happens to him, I do not feel that same type of relation or empathy towards someone like Dean Winchester, or whenever it happens to someone like Batman. I can't think of a specific example. I'm sure it has happened. Those are the ones where just like these men they're just men, and they are burdened with terrible responsibility.
Right. And you know, you keep saying burdened with terrible responsibility, and I think the key here is that it works better when they've actually lost things and are given the opportunity to get those things back. Right.
Right.
You know, it's this thing where like some characters go through it and it's like, okay, well, the whole world's going to die if you don't continue on with your thing. But unless they're being truly tempted with the things that they've lost and what they have to go through, or what they have to lose coming up, you know, if like I'm thinking of a video game, Jade Empire, where you have to sacrifice all of your party members for a certain ending, and you know, having that knowledge and having the character be like, okay, well, I am going to continue, and this means I'm going to give up all these things. Yeah, and that's what, just real quick, that's the difference between Dean and Superman, right? Like, Krypton is an idea to him. It's not a reality. Right. He's never known Krypton.
Right. For Dean, in his specific situation, he gets his mom back.
Right. And
you know,
that's why Onward actually kind of failed as a movie.
Yeah. It didn't make me care about that at all. I apparently I'm in the minority for that movie, but yeah, I agreed.
Now for me, actually, one of my favorite uses of this trope comes in Buffy, Buffy the Vampire Slayer. At the end of season 5 of Buffy, and Buffy is a great show. I would say that season 1 is god awful, but Buffy at the end of season 5, Buffy actually dies. And at the beginning of season 6, her friends and, you know, the party members, so to speak, resurrect her. And it's not until a few episodes later that you really find out that Buffy was in this place. She was in heaven. She was happy. And she got dragged back into her responsibilities as the Slayer, as the superhero to save the world. So it's this really interesting trope where you never really see it from Buffy's point of view, you see it from the main character's point of view, or the ancillary character, the party members' point of view. They've lost their friend.
Do you see Buffy in the afterlife at all?
You see her kind of in like a glowing void.
But you don't see her experience.
Right. You don't see her experience. And she ends up having a form of PTSD from this, because she's going from this place where everything was perfect to a world that's violent, and she has to be violent to survive.
Right.
Yeah, it's a fascinating use of this trope. I mean, it's also a little bit different from this trope because Buffy never actually has the choice, and that's another one of the things. Her friends took this choice away from her. It's a really beautiful thing, and I've just started kind of toying around with Buffy again. And I'm really excited to get to this point of the plot. Ah, man, dude, Buffy's so good.
Yeah, I haven't watched it. To be honest, I personally have no interest in it.
Right. I mean, it's it's past its date, right?
Yeah,
like most of
issue.
it's already been. If it's been important, it's been put into popular culture. You know about it, and also the 22 episode season for really what is 3 or 4 episodes worth of story each season. Like that no longer flies.
Right. It's different from something like Supernatural, where the value of the seasons does not come in those 3 to 5 episodes of plot, right? The value comes from the excellence of the filler. I have not heard that about Buffy. I've soured on Whedon through the years, so there's that.
Yeah,
too.
yeah. I mean, me too. I'm looking forward to giving Whedon a real shot with his new stupidly named The Nevers. It's something like that. It's an HBO show.
It sounds right. It sounds exactly like the same like BS that he's been trying to do for the last 40 years, 40 years.
Yeah, exactly.
In terms of like faux female empowerment and stuff like that. But that's neither here nor there. Back to escapist fiction here. Which, are there any examples that you think where the character chooses to relinquish his responsibility?
See, I couldn't think of any. There are examples where the character does not get that choice.
Sure.
Usually in horror movies at the very end, or a certain movie that's very, very much like Venom, Ariel, that we've talked about quite a bit. I won't spoil that, but it's almost always a given that the character makes the choice to continue being the hero. Otherwise, the hero's arc ends.
Yes. Yeah.
And that's part of the problem with why this trope can also be kind of annoying, because I kind of sit there yelling at the character, like, okay, just go ahead. Aang, I know you're going to go and be the Avatar. Like, go ahead and just accept it. Okay, your friends and family from 100 years ago are dead.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah. It's a bit annoying. It takes a very special work of fiction to do this the right way, to make you feel like that the hero could actually choose. I think it works best when it's an ancillary character who has to choose.
I agree with you there. When it becomes a matter of the audience unsure whether or not somebody will make that choice, of course, it's the ancillary character that it works better for. In terms of the hero, when we know that they are going to, of course, take back their responsibility, escape the escapist fiction, it only works if we are truly invested in the character. When it happens in Supernatural, I think it happens in season 4. Buffy, you said it happens in season 6. Superman, you could do it at any point in any time. We know who that is. That's not a concern. And it it just relies on how invested you are in that particular character in terms of a TV show and the main character for that arc to work.
Yeah, yeah. I also think it's more interesting when it's like a character of the week, in Supernatural, or a character who's been there 2 or 3 times before. I'm thinking of Supernatural, a Felicia Day's character.
Yeah, Charlie?
Yeah, who ultimately does decide to go off into the
right
into the unknown. That's when it works better. But I'm really trying to think of like a character who chooses the non-reality. Like that would be a great moment for a main character, like for a hero to meet their end with this temptation.
It does happen, actually.
Oh.
It happened very recently in perhaps the biggest movie of all time. Avengers Endgame with Captain America at the very end.
You're right.
He does decide to stay behind, given the opportunity, and live out his life in a reality that is not his. So and as an audience member, if you're really paying attention, you knew the decision he was going to make. But it still hits. It still hits you pretty hard. But for perhaps the average audience member, you're just like, no, he did it. Like, you don't quite think that he would do it, but it was one of the more successful uses of this trope, I think.
Yes. It definitely was. It does feel a little bit like a, having your cake and eating it too, because he did save the world. There are other people who can do it in his place.
Right. It's a different, yeah.
Dude, yeah, that is a perfect example.
I mean, but it's also, he is burdened with the same responsibility that someone like Batman, someone like Superman is, where even though he knows that there are people in place, a man like that does not sit idly by while the world is in peril. And he does. Like we are led to assume that he goes back in time. He does not interfere with this timeline as life goes on. He knows how things will move on, that the world moves on, right? With or without him, which is a lesson I think he learned only because he was stuck in the ice for 60 years. It's just an interesting example of a character. The only one I can think of, main character. But you're right. He does not have that same level of responsibility that Buffy or Dean or Batman, right? That Batman has never just saved the world from Darkseid and decides to take a break.
That would be totally antithetical to his character.
Oh, like in The Dark Knight Rises?
Yeah. Like Batman can't stop being Batman. That's what makes him Batman. And it's what makes him different from Captain America. Agreed. Captain America, he's done his service. He knows he has. Right. He doesn't need to keep doing this.
Yeah, he's a soldier, not a vigilante.
Yeah. And now you've got me thinking of like situations like that where, can we appreciate how good of an ending that was for all these characters?
It was a showcase in fan service done really well, because that's all you can call it, is fan service for most of that. The only character that does not get their due is the Hulk, which frustrates me to this day, right? Because I love him, I love that character, and I love the use of him. But Captain Marvel, Captain America, Thor, Iron Man, Thor is Infinity War, perhaps not Endgame, but yeah, there's just so much fan service in it, and it just worked so well.
Yeah, that's when people say that Marvel just recycles the same movie over and over again, it's things like that make the entire thing kind of worth going through.
Yeah, agreed. So you wrote this question here, and I'll let you answer it. Does this trope work better with big stakes or a large stake situation, or in terms of a more micro situation. You know, when we are when Dean Winchester goes through this scenario in Supernatural, does he know that he is meant, that he has a bigger purpose with his life?
I think by this time he does know. Certainly in the Heaven episode, they definitely do. I can't remember about the Jinn though.
I'm not sure. But yeah, this is an interesting question. Does, as an audience member, both you and I, do we think that this works when? So personally, I'll answer it myself.
Yeah.
I think this works better when the only thing at stake is their sense of seeing their loved ones and continuing on their, let's say, crusade, as opposed to, I don't know, Harry, like if this happened to Harry Potter. I don't know if it does. If this happens to, I don't know, Buffy, when it happens to Superman, right? Superman is a huge exception to Captain America, because Superman knows that if he is gone, there are 50 billion people out there, right, looking at planet Earth thinking, it's ripe for the taking, the Kryptonian's not there. I think it works better when the world is not at stake. I just think that when the world's at stake, then you imply the Star-Lord logic, because I'm one of the idiots living in it type thing. So to me, like, if I were put in that situation where I could have everything I want, but the world's going to blow up, I'm going to fight for the world. So just, yeah, what do you think, Andy?
Yeah, no, I very much agree with you. It works better when all the stakes are kind of internal and personal to the character. If it's a matter of getting to relive or getting to see a loved one who died again and getting to live with them, or getting to rewrite your own wrongs, or maybe even ease your own guilt, that stake works much better. But if we're really supposed to like these characters, like them, their actions and think that they're good, well, the truth of the matter is, when the burden comes down to it, and if it's the world, if it's all these external factors at large, well, the main character, or the character who has making this choice, they should choose the greater good. Like, that feels too obvious. If it's more, getting to relive a romance again and make a different choice, or something like that, then it's completely different.
Right. I think you see this a lot in About Time.
Oh yeah.
Where he never has to, where he always has a chance to right a wrong through his actions. But yeah, that's an interesting one there too.
Right. Or I'm thinking of Doctor Who. One of the things about Doctor Who that I really loved when I was a Whovian was that all of the Doctor's companions are worse off for being with the Doctor.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah, it's undoubtedly.
Yeah. But like, ultimately, and I'm always thinking of my favorite one, my favorite companion, Donna, Catherine Tate, who actually gets to see what it would be like if she never met the Doctor, who gets to see how, just shallow and vain she would be. And then she has to decide, in some ways or in others, if keeping that vainness, if she would rather save the world and let her go back to this, or keep these memories. Man, Donna, like, all the companions are messed up because of the Doctor, but Donna, I think, gets the worst one.
Sure. Yeah. What is your favorite? Is that your favorite use of this trope, or do you have is the Buffy one?
I think the Buffy one is my favorite, because it does take it places guilt on the characters who were hurting the most. right? It places the guilt on Buffy's, I'm just going to call them the party members or the Scooby Gang, who don't want to continue living without Buffy, don't want to take this responsibility of being the superheroes in this town, so they revive her. Mm-hmm. And then they find out that she was happy.
Yeah. That's a good
also
point.
the Rick and Morty episode where it's called M. Night Shyamalan's.
Which one is that?
That's the one where Jerry is in a simulation. You know, the got apples.
Oh yeah. That one, or the one where they like take the brain trip and make cookies.
Yeah.
All right, I'll tell you my favorite one, and it's something you actually didn't write down, Andy. There is a 3-issue arc in Robert Kirkman and Ryan Ottley's Invincible.
Oh.
Where Mark Grayson, the character Invincible, is given the choice to go back to the moment he discovered he had powers and live that life with the knowledge that he has now. We are assuming that the beings who had transported him back to this point actually have this ability. He will be reliving his life. Spoiler alert, skip ahead 2 minutes if you don't want to hear it. When he finally decides that he does not want to live this life and to go through as planned as he has lived life so far, because he has a daughter, he returns to find that 5 years have passed since he went into that time-traveling escapade. And that's the reason why this is my favorite. Because due to the choice that he made, he had a cost to it. The cost was one way or another, and he still had to suffer through the cost. It was a great subversion of expectation, done very, very well by Kirkman, because that's what that comic is about, right? It's about subverting the expectation of what a superhero comic book is. And I think they did it really, really well by taking this trope and putting it and putting the audience through the exact emotions you expect them to go through, but with a result that is still not quite what you would expect, but it's something you could expect from the Invincible comic.
Yeah, everyone should read Invincible. It's great.
Yeah, my all-time favorite superhero comic book, Invincible. Is there anything else about this particular topic? Is there any character you would love to go to see this happen to?
Oh man, characters I would love to see this happen to. First of all, Peter Parker or Miles Morales all day, every day. Like, and I'm sure this has happened multiple times due to Mysterio being a factor. You know,
it's happened to Peter Parker probably a dozen times.
Right. I mean, and that was one of the truly tragic ones where he gets the choice to save Gwen Stacy or, you know, undo some of his wrongs. But other characters, man, I mean, pretty much any character who has like just a big tragedy that they could have prevented in the core of their being. I would have loved to have seen the Godzilla movie where Bryan Cranston doesn't go through what he goes through, you know, so we could actually have got Bryan Cranston versus Godzilla instead, but whatever.
Yeah, right. To me, the best versions of this are the ones where, besides Invincible, right, where he does have the Superman power, but it does come at a cost, where it's just people, right? Dean, you know, Dean Winchester, you think of, I don't know, countless characters where I am not a god at battle. I'm not an alien who shoots fire from my eyes. I'm just a person, and I have a responsibility, or I know the truth, and I can, you know, Men in Black does this really well with Agent K. At any point, he can retire.
Yeah, the Flash also, I mean, the entire DC universe pretty much suffered because the Flash wanted to see what life would be like with his mother.
Right. Things like that. Yeah, that's a good example. So, yeah, this is a good topic. This is a good trope. Something interesting to talk about.
Yeah, and it gave us something to do for a week when I'm recovering from exams.
Yeah. Do we know what we're talking about next week, Andy?
Yes, Ariel, we're going to be talking about what we do in the shadows.
Yes. We will. I watched the pilot on FX on Hulu. It's hilarious.
Yes. Yes.
I've seen the film.
Good.
Maybe we'll talk a little bit about monsters and humor and stuff like that. So we'll do that. But I do have a little announcement here before homework. I have started up. I haven't started up. I joined a podcast called The Four Nations Report, which is an Avatar rewatch podcast. I will be placing that episode in the Geek 101 feed, just the first one. So if you want to go listen to me and two friends talk about the Avatar weekly, and by the time this comes out, most of you are listening to your Avatar will have already been out on Netflix. Just something for us to talk about, a medium length project while we go through the series of Avatar: The Last Airbender.
Oh, that's nice, Ariel. Doing a podcast without me. Okay, I got it.
Hey man, it wasn't my idea. Okay, it was somebody else's idea.
I mean, you know me. I don't really care that much about Avatar: The Last Airbender anyway. I had Zuko and Sokka and Toph. Yeah.
All right.
Ariel, let's watch that movie.
Oh God, I might now. I might, yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know how long I'll last in it. Good Lord. All right. What's your homework, Andy, for this week?
All right. My homework is the game that kind of made me start thinking about this. It is on Steam. It is called To the Moon. It is a visual novel where you play two characters who work for a company, and the company's goal, their modus operandi, is to go into the memories of people who are on their deathbeds and correct their memories so that they have lived their life's goal. The game in particular focuses on one character who his life goal was to go to the moon. And it is a emotional roller coaster that will leave you sobbing. And it is beautiful. It only takes about 3 to 4 hours to play through. It's a wonderful experience. At the bare minimum, go through and watch a YouTube Let's Play of it. It is such a beautiful, beautiful story.
Yeah, that's probably a good idea. The Let's Play versions of games like that. My homework this week is a podcast I've been listening to in lieu of reading the actual book, because the book is a slog. I am listening to the Romance of the Three Kingdoms podcast, which was a podcast that just finished a couple years ago, I believe. It is a podcast that details all the events of the book Romance of the Three Kingdoms. So instead of trying to read this 1,000 page book that was written in the early 1st or 2nd century, I am instead listening to a podcast summing up everything that happens. This is because I decided on a whim to buy Dynasty Warriors 8 on my Switch. That's really fun. The way that the podcaster kind of like talks about what happens, gives you context, gives you maps on his website. It's very good. It's very, very easy to digest. He always calls back to something if if you need it. Things like that. His name is John Zhu, Zhu, and you can find that at Romance of the Three Kingdoms podcast.
Wait a minute, Ariel. So I don't think there's anything more millennial than saying, the hipster thing used to be, well, I didn't read it, but I listened to the audiobook. But now what you're saying is that you didn't read it. You didn't listen to the audiobook. You listened to the podcast summary of it.
That's correct.
Okay.
Efficiency.
Yeah. I mean, oh, dude, we should do an episode on like Red Cliff.
That's a good one. Or yeah, or
Epic War.
Right. Yeah, the Three Kingdoms or something like that.
Yeah.
That's definitely on our docket, perhaps. All right, Andy, let's get out of here. Next week, a reminder, we will be talking about what we do in the shadows, both the movie and the TV show. But before
it
that,
is on Hulu.
It is on Hulu, yes.
Watch it.
Andy, where can people find you online?
You can find me online on Twitter and Letterboxd at Hebrews Pale Ale.
Or you can find me on Twitter at Portly Island Boy. You can find us on Twitter at Geek101 Podcast. I messed this up. But anyway, you can email us geek101pod@gmail.com. That's all we have for today. Class dismissed.